Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gail. And welcome to Women Over 70, Aging Reimagined, our award-winning weekly podcast. Visit womenover70.com to learn about all our offerings and ways to become involved.
And today we are excited to be talking with Dr. Rosemary Grant, age 87. Rosemary is a world-renowned evolutionary biologist whose fieldwork on Darwin's finches on an uninhabited island in the Galápagos spanned 40 years. As a married research team, Rosemary and her husband Peter demonstrated that, and I quote, evolution by natural selection can be observed in an entirely natural environment, thus contributing to a profound understanding of the importance of biodiversity for our planet. In 2009, at age 72, Rosemary retired from teaching and committee work of university life, but not from research. She is a research scholar emerita at Princeton University, the base for her international seminars and research projects with faculty and doctoral students. Rosemary chronicles her unorthodox and inspiring journey to earning a PhD at age 49 and becoming a pioneering scientist. This is in her 2024 memoir, One Step Sideways, 3 Steps Forward. Rosemary is committed to mentoring women all over the world on how to navigate the academic scientific world while raising children, often with an academic partner, which she calls the two-body problem. Welcome, Rosemary, to Women Over 70. We're just thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction.
So I spent a couple of days reading every word of your book because it's absolutely fascinating. And I was living vicariously through you. And so I want to say that I think your book is a must-read about how rigorous academic or scientific research can contribute to our understanding of the necessity of diversity among the species, animal and human. So could give us a glimpse, I know that's a tall order, but give us a glimpse into your lifelong fascination with biological and cultural diversity and how this leads to change.
Okay. I'd be very happy to do this. I'm going to slightly do biological diversity first and then the cultural diversity. But both of them started when I was very, very young. And the biological diversity started, I grew up in the Lake District in England and in an area that is Carboniferous limestone, and it's just packed with fossils. And then also there's coal there, and it was during the winter when those days we heated with coal, which is terrible, I know, but this is what happened. And I remember seeing the shiny coal, wonderful fossils of ferns and ecosystem's, which grew in our garden. But my mother explained that these were actually the remnants millions of years ago of trees that were huge trees. So I was fascinated with this. How and why were these things, how were they very similar to things that I was seeing today? How and why had they changed? And I longed to find out. And this question actually remained with me right through my life, still is with me right through my life. And so then when I met, when I was at university, I studied genetics a long time ago, but then I met Peter, and Peter had exactly the same question as I had, but from a completely different point of view. He was from an ecologist point of view. I was more from a geneticist point of view. But we really wanted to find out how and why species changed. So both Darwin and Wallace suggested that the place to look was in a young radiation, and there were plenty of these about, but we went back to decided to look at Darwin's finches because it's a very young radiation. That means that there are many species which have arisen from a common ancestor. It occurred in pristine environment and on many islands that were completely uninhabited, had always been uninhabited by humans. So we thought that any changes we measured and saw were completely natural. And also, it sits astride the equator, and so these islands are subject to the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon, which brings droughts in some years and torrential rain in other years. So very flexible environment. Long story short, he spent 40 plus years actually on the islands every year doing meticulous measurements and things, collected blood samples, is still analyzing these blood samples with collaborators. But we found at least 3 different ways of speciation. One of them very excitingly involved what we call introgression. That's genetic, through hybridization, small bits of genes went from one species into another, increase the genetic variation on which selection could act in a changing environment. And so this was very exciting. And it was exciting not just for us, who found 3 different methods of speciation, but also other people who have worked on, like Svante Paabo, on humans, have found the same sort of thing with introgression between Denisovans and Neanderthals, and our early modern human ancestors have caused increased the variation on which selection has then acted. It's also been interested by people who are studying cancer, and we've been invited to cancer places in both the United States and in England, because if you think of cancer in the lung and cancer in the colon, let's say, very different ecosystems, exactly like Darwin's finches on different islands. And the same sort of introgression can happen between them, which could lead to all sorts of, unfortunately, in cancer, metastasis and things like that. But so long, maybe too long an answer, but yes. So, and then you said cultural diversity. Mm-hmm. That again happened when I was very young, again in the Lake District in England, where the shepherds have had, this has been going on for well over 1,000 years. They have, and they have a language which was, well, they have a dialect, which a lot of words that are very, very different, including the way of counting. So 1, 2, 3, they count as Jan, Pan, Tethera, and many other words that they use, but they have a culture which they've had for well over 1,000 years, which is called fell rights. So farmers get together and decide how many of their sheep they can put on common land. So and they work this out themselves. So it's a cooperation leading to everybody being allowed to put their sheep on a certain number of sheep on the fells, and the fells are a bit like alpine meadows. So that was really interesting. But at the same time, when I was a child, I was growing up during the Second World War, and there you can imagine it was we were being bombed, and I can still remember the sound of the German planes as they went over us every night. So there was this fear of, as a child, why were people wanting to kill us, and why were we being bombed? And at the same time, I met some German prisoners of war. They were putting in it was a German war camp nearby, and they were putting in some water pipes just outside our garden at home. And my brother and I went over and spoke to one of the men who could speak English very well. He showed us photographs of he had a daughter that was the same age as me, and my brother was a bit younger, had a son the same age as my brother. And he said, "Oh, I hate war. I wish this war would stop. I want to get home to see my children." He made a toy for my brother, and he made a little bracelet for me. And so we were speaking to them every day. And thought my parents didn't know about this, but they did, of course. And they explained about Hitler and how one person that had power over, and his acolytes had power over many people, and that there were many German people who also did not want war. And so this really struck home. Why was there this enormous difficulty and the difference between conflict and cooperation between people? And cooperation between people could have a marvelous. When you had cooperation between people, you could discuss things. You could all sorts of enlightenment came about, and even for things like trying to stop war. And I took up this theme again when I was in retirement, and we were traveling the world mainly for conferences and giving scientific talks. But I was also interested in the history of the different areas that we went to, and saw the power of how one dictator, if you like, has the power to transmit his or her ideas to thousands, and can completely reverse, has a terrific impact on history. And I write about this in the last three or four chapters in my book.
Thank you so much for that. You know, speaking of your book, the title of your book, and could you hold your book up, Goris? Let us see your book. Is 1 step sideways, 3 steps forward. And you have been a researcher and a scientist for many, many years, and yet you were 49 when you completed your PhD. So what does the title of your book mean to you? Why that title?
Yes, this title actually means a lot to me, because it means that when you follow your passion and you come up against a brick wall, then you can either step backwards and then it's lost. But there are many routes to the same objective. So you can step sideways and you can go up on a different trajectory and finally reach your goal. So as long as you have that goal there are several ways you can do. And I think that in my life, there have been 3 major stepping points. And by stepping sideways, I came across wonderful things which I never could actually even imagine. So I'm really glad I had this stepping sideways. It wasn't just going on a straightforward line of school, university, PhD, job. It was these very sideways steps which revealed an enormous amount. So the first one was when I wasn't allowed to take or was very discouraged about taking the university entrance exam. So I left school, I took a job and took a correspondence course. And that correspondence course was so much a much higher level than my school. So I got into university. I think maybe I wouldn't have got into university if I'd just stayed at school. So and not only did I get into university by taking the correspondence course, but all of a sudden I had another block in the same time when usually you took the exams at school. But I had to frantically look around. How could I take these exams when I wasn't part of a school? And I found that people from Africa, there were some men from Africa who had the same problem, trying to get the university entrance exams in Edinburgh. This was doing it in Edinburgh. And they were in a small, I suppose we'd call them digs, but it was a house anyway. And I joined them. So here I was, the only woman. And then, of course, I met people from a completely different culture that I had never met before. And this was wonderful. We became really good friends. And I took the exam with them, and some of them came to Edinburgh University as well. So I kept up some of those friends. And so that was 2 good things that happened with that 1 step sideways. The next step was, it was when I was at Edinburgh and wanted to do a PhD. I thought of doing the work with Char in Iceland because they diversified a lot, again from a common ancestor. And the people in Edinburgh, my professors, liked my PhD proposal. It wasn't there, but they didn't want me to go as a young girl on my own to Iceland. And so one of them had found out about, had been asked to recommend somebody to teach embryology at the University of British Columbia. And because I'd done some special things, he suggested me. And I thought, oh, well, 1 year there, I'll be going to British Columbia, the mountains, which I loved. And also I would learn about teaching. And then I'd come back and do my PhD. Well, I went there and I never did go back to Edinburgh to do my PhD, but I met Peter. So that was, and so that was wonderful. And we then did work together. And then the third step sideways was after we had children, we were very short of money. We didn't have enough money for me to go back and do a PhD then. But we thought if I took a step sideways and I did a teacher's training course, then I could get some money teaching in a school, and in the summer I could go do my research work. So I did that, and the wonderful thing about that is that during that time I learned about the Finnish education system, and I write excuse me. And I write a lot about that in my book. This was it really it opened my eyes to a wonderful way of teaching. And this has been an inspiration both for teaching in school, excuse me, and and at university. So, but all my steps sideways have been wonderful. And I think the message is you never lose sight of your goal, and there are many routes to the same objective.
Wow. And what does 3 steps forward mean to you?
Oh, 3 steps. Well, I think in both those cases, when I went sideways, I took a huge leap forward. I mean, the leap forward, I got into university, met people from a completely different culture that I had ever done before. When I went to Vancouver, I met Peter, my lifelong companion, who had been married for, I think, 64 years. And then when the third one was the Finnish school system, and I write a lot about that, later in the last chapters, where I think the actual educational system is so good that if we followed that education system, if we could, then I think we'd be able to eliminate a lot of the problems in the world. Yeah. And I discussed this actually quite a lot towards the end of my book. So I think I think there were 3 huge leaps.
Well, I want to make sure our listeners appreciate that you did your research on an humans. And so the living conditions were relatively modest, as I could tell from your book. And you're no stranger to camping out for long periods of time. And say a little bit about the conditions that you lived with.
We did the work on 2 uninhabited islands, and we took our children with us. The children were 6 and 8 when we first went there. The big difficulty was that in neither island was there water. So we had to take all our water with us. I mean, not only did we have to take all our food, but we had to take absolutely every drop of water. And well, on one island, our kitchen was in a cave. We always, of course, camped. And on another island, it's a much larger island. Genovesa was a bigger island. We were up on top of the cliff a little bit further back. When we first went there were very few people who visit us to Galápagos. Now, of course, there are thousands, but then there weren't. And so we could go when we were in Genovesa, we could go for 3 weeks without seeing a boat at all. At those days, we didn't have radios. We got radios as soon as we could. And of course, when we finished, we had cell phones. But when we first started, we didn't have anything. But in some ways, you're a little bit, people knew we were out there. I mean, the research station knew we were out there. So anybody who did come out would bring letters for us. And so we were okay. And I had taken lots of medical equipment with us. And my father, who's a doctor, told me how to diagnose appendicitis, and I had antibiotics and everything but fortunately, the children knew that they had to be careful. They were I think we were really lucky. We had wonderful children that were responsible. They knew that they were responsible. They knew they couldn't go swimming when we weren't there and that sort of thing. So fortunately, nothing happened. Yeah.
So I wonder if you include in your book a letter that one of your daughters wrote about her experience of living that life with you and your husband. And it's such a lovely, lovely story about what she gained, her view of the world, and that really set her on a path for her own professional life. So I just would encourage people to read it because it's just so amazing. I know that you are a strong advocate for women who are trying to navigate the academic scientific career, having children, and often a spouse who's also an academic, which you call the two-body problem. How do we take care of two people in the same institution? So could you talk a bit about that and what you're advocating and how you're helping women?
Yes, I feel quite strongly about this because it's not it's not only women. There are often two people of the same sex who are partners and want to live together in the same place. Sometimes it's the woman gets a job, but the man wants to be in the same place as well, and other is vice versa. So it's all these things, but of course it's mostly, as you say, it's mostly women. But there are as many. I was amazed. There are as many as 70% of people have an academic partner of some sort, and so it's really important that they want to obviously live in the same place, and if they have children, they want to rear the children together. So the obvious things like having daycares, centers that are affordable, because many of them aren't affordable, and not for starting out salary, and to have so they've got some of these so I've also been looking at the grants and fellowships that could which would enable routes back into science for people who have had a break for any reason. This could be having children, it could be looking after elderly parents, it could be from even some people in an unsafe or discriminatory environment, but to have a grant that allows people to get back into this. And there are a few. The Wellcome Foundation has some, and the Royal Society has others. But I'd like to see more of them, because a lot of them. So there's that I've been trying to encourage, and and oh yes, and the other, I had never thought of this until we were in Germany. I was at a meeting in Germany just very recently about exactly this thing. And there were people from all over the world. And they said one of the big things is that often one person moves to a country and the partner wants to follow naturally. And they have great difficulty with the visas. So this is another thing that that could be helped with would be getting visas for the other partner and for the children if they come. But it's more, I think it's more visas for the other partner. The children seem to get visas more easily, but it's getting visas was a huge problem. I hadn't realized what a problem that was. So all these things, paid parental leave for both parents. Now this, I was in Europe, so in some places, like the Scandinavian countries, they have 2 years paid parental leave, one taken by the mother, one by the father, and so that's not a problem. But in our country, there's no legislation for paid parental leave at all. And I know in Princeton, they do allow a certain amount of time, but it's not very long. It's only a few weeks. I mean, it's nothing like 2 years. And so it differs between countries. It would be nice to see that it is important to have paid parental leave till the child is, and of course these countries, like Scandinavian countries, they have very good daycare after that, which is free, and so it'd be nice to see a much greater support for young families.
Yeah, Rosemary. So what's been the impact for your own daughters? I'm curious. All the adventure living.
Well, the good thing about being in both Canada when we first took them, and in the United States is that you can take them out of school, and we took them out of school and took them with us to the Galápagos. They loved it, and when they got a bit older, we would say, well, one of us will stay behind if you want to stay at school, and the other one will take it in turns. So there'll always be one with you at home if you want to stay at home. No way, absolutely, they wanted to come, absolutely. And so they did this right up to university, and then even our one daughter, when she was at university, would come and join us at every opportunity she could. And the other daughter, actually, one of them went and worked with a friend on Cocos Island when she was, I think, first year undergraduate, and then so they were absolutely hooked. And I explain in my book that they also, although they helped us, they had a lot of free time. They read and they did all sorts of things, but they also did their own piece of work, which Peter helped them to publish. So they came out with 2 publications. And then one of them, Nicola, was given this piece of work when she was doing her biology course it was a makeup biology course. Anyway, they were given her paper to read, and she didn't, the teacher never knew it was her paper. So, and she said, "This is my paper." And so how am I meant to write about my paper? So anyway, I think she was given another had publication. Yeah. And they both say to us, you didn't do everything right by any matter of means, but one thing you did right was to take us to the islands. They loved
Camping.
and loved camping. Yes, they were absolute troopers. I mean, they never complained. In fact, we were there one time with an El Nino when it just rained and rained and rained. Our boots were full of water, our tents were leaking, and we used the children's crayons, which were wax crayons, to cover the seams so that the water didn't leak in. And I complained a bit, and the children was like, "Mom, you don't complain?"
Raised them well. So, Rosemary, you are 87, and maybe by the time this episode is released, you'll be 88. And you're not slowing down, it sounds like. So you're still traveling the world, going to conferences, continuing your research. And how do you think about aging, if you think about it at all?
I don't until I look in the mirror or look at myself on Zoom. No, I actually don't. We collaborate. Fortunately, both Peter and I are reasonably healthy. We're quite active. We collaborate with some terrific young people who are geneticists, genomic people. We fortunately kept all our blood samples, so we're now being able to